The suffering of dairy cows was a big reason people gave when I asked them why they became vegan.
There's been a higher awareness with the cruelty of especially the dairy industry recently.
There have been so many more dairy alternatives made, especially over the past few years, and making the change has become more and more popular. However, although we've been told that the dairy industry is cruel, most of us don't know the full reasons behind that belief. So I've decided to look into the suffering the cows face and ask the question, could we improve the welfare of dairy cows? To start off with, I saw this as an area that people don't talk about much with veganism because people mention the meat side and we all know about the meat, so I wanted to do about dairy. So to start off with, I did what most modern people do and I went to Google and I've done my research and I found out the main problems with the dairy industry, and I want to go through that in the order of the life of a dairy cow. So first of all, the cow is born and they're separated from their mother, which is quite distressing because they've got the bond already. So the cows quite often cry out for each other. And then throughout the cow's life, they are artificially inseminated, so they're forcibly impregnated over and over again, which is quite exhausting for the cows because they don't really get a break, and they're made to produce on average 8,000 kilograms of milk per year, and this tires them out and leads to lots of health problems. And also the most common disease with dairy cows is mastitis. I don't know whether I'm saying that right, but that's when there's an infection in the mammary gland or the udder, which leads to a lot of swelling and pain. And what shocks me about this is that it's quite easily preventable, because if you have a hygienic milking process, then you avoid one of the causes of it, because there's two causes of mastitis. There's infection caused by bacteria introduced during the milking process, and there's also physical trauma. And because the udders close 15 minutes after milking stopped, quite often the cows are introduced back into the mud, and this introduces bacteria which goes into the udder and causes an infection, and mastitis is actually fatal. So it's shocking that it's so easily preventable, but it's not prevented for financial reasons, because I suppose if they take time to go leave them for 15 minutes and clean them out and stuff, that's quite expensive to get all the cleaning products to make sure it's hygienic. But it should just be a thing that's just done. And also, cows aren't always outdoors. Quite a lot of cows are outdoors, but 20% of cows in the UK are zero grazed, which means that they are never outside. So this leads to a lot of overcrowding, and the lack of exercise can lead to lameness if they're not exercising their legs properly. And also, if they're indoors, they can be fed a grain diet, which leads to digestive problems and a lack of the correct nutrients. And then quite often, due to their very exhaustive life, it's no longer financially viable to keep the same cows because they're no longer producing milk at the same rate. So they're usually slaughtered at around the age of 5, when naturally they'd live to about 20. There could be a lot better welfare if we knew a lot more about the industry. So that's what I want to do with this documentary. I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do, but I just want to share with you different ways of doing things. So I found a place that's tried to avoid these problems in my research, and they sent me their advert, which I'm going to show you now, which explains how they avoid lots of these problems.
The not-for-profit Ahimsa Dairy is a pioneering and unique farm that is entirely slaughter-free. Our much-loved cows retire when their milking days are over, and the bull calves are raised to be magnificent working oxen. All will live out their days with us until their natural end. Ahimsa calves remain with their mothers in the milking herd, and we do not use artificial insemination. Instead, we have a big Swiss brown bull called Superhero, whose job it is to please the ladies. The cows graze on organic pasture and we milk by hand.
Learning about places like the one shown in the advert and different techniques used to try and make farming more ethical, it really made me realise how much people are doing to try and change the dairy industry. But obviously not all of the techniques will become popular and some places may become bankrupt, so may not succeed long term. So to find out which ones might last longer, I decided to ask a few people close to me about what their views are on lots of different techniques, because how farming is carried out on the future depends on which places people are most likely to buy from, so it depends on the consumer. So I decided to talk to a few different people close to me and find out what they thought of the different techniques. Today I'm here with my brother Alfie and Alfie is a non-vegan, so he has all the animal products. This is my mum.
Hi, I'm Lottie's mum and I'm a vegetarian. Well, free range, the ideal of free range is having like lots of nice green fields for things to roam around in. But in reality, I think it's sometimes like they just have a barn with a hole that they can in theory get out in.
So do you think that's better then?
Yeah, I think it's good, but I think some things are labelled free range that aren't necessarily.
There are some disadvantages of being outside as well, like there's an increased risk of predation, and obviously there's an increase in rural crime.
What
Which
preys on cows? I can understand that for chickens, but cows?
which one?
Who's going to eat the cows?
No, but just like animals can attack them, you know what I
Okay.
mean? So what do you think about free range?
Well, it's like they get the option to green space, they can go out.
Yeah, true. I got told when I was researching that lots of them still do stay in barns for quite a lot of the year, but because of the risk of predation and everything, it is probably safer that they stay indoors, and also because of the increase in rural crime, because lots of the calves are hunted or something just for the fun of people, and that causes quite a lot of trauma for the other cows. So it's probably best as well that when there's no one watching them and when it's night, it's probably best sometimes in certain areas of high levels of crime if you keep them in a more enclosed space. What do you think, Alfie?
Where's their adventure? They
Oh,
need to go out
yeah.
and explore.
I think, to be fair, they probably should tackle it by decreasing the amount of crime and working on protection from predation instead of just leaving them to not have any time outside. Alfie, what do you think of organic?
There's like less chemicals in it and stuff. It's more like purely organic.
Yeah.
Yeah, organic's a good thing. It reduces the use of chemicals and you don't want them messed up in your food chain.
Interesting. So I found out they can still be kept in barns and stuff, but it just means that they're usually fed from natural feed instead of feed that has chemicals in and lots of unnatural substances. What do you think about calf at foot method? And the calf at foot method is where the calves are kept with the mothers instead of being separated, because quite a lot of cows used to be separated, so that farmers can maximise the amount of milk, so maximise profits. What do you think?
But it's good for them to stay with their mother so it can be a natural kind of experience.
Do you think it's fair that they're doing what they think is the right thing, but they're losing out on profit because 1/3 of the milk produced is going to the calf? Do you think they should cover the teats instead? Because quite a lot of the udders are covered after a while, so they still get to stay with their mother, but the milk just isn't going to the calves. So they don't go through the trauma, but they still don't get their mother's milk. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I'm not the business. They can get enough for like a decent wage, but then
Yeah, the
so
problem is though that if there's like a bad year or something, businesses can go bankrupt if they're taking that risk. Technically, you can still get milk for human consumption and still feed the calves on the milk.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds like a good idea.
If you knew that one of the milk was a bit more expensive, but it was calf at foot, would you buy it?
It depends how much more expensive.
Because there's lots of cases of different farms going bankrupt because they don't have enough money to do that method, because it's quite expensive, because there's a loss of about a third of the milk production. So would you pay for it if it was quite a lot more expensive than normal milk?
I'm not sure. It might not be viable because we get through quite a lot of milk.
And what do you think of selective breeding and artificial insemination in order to get the best pair bred together to maximise the milk production?
Well, I understand it, but just allow it to happen.
So this decreases biodiversity, so it means that if there's an environmental change, they're more likely to be wiped out, and also there's a higher risk of the genetic diseases being inherited because the gene pool's smaller. So do you think it's best to have a variety in there?
Variety?
Yeah, like completely different cows, just...
Yeah. So less diseases and stuff.
Yeah, because it's best to prioritise the welfare of the cows and make sure that they're healthy. You could also do DNA tests as well to check to see if they're carriers of the disease, to make sure that you don't breed the cows which are both carriers of the disease, to minimise the risk of them catching any genetic diseases. Yeah. But there's the common breeds that get used for dairy all the time. What do you think about having so many of the same breed of cow in all of the dairy farms?
It can be okay as long as the rare breeds are still preserved somewhere.
I feel like the problem is that unless it's a financially viable option and there's a high demand for them, no one's really going to be breeding the rare breeds for dairy if they're not high producers of milk.
Okay.
So I don't know what we can do about that, because that's a low biodiversity. I don't really know what impact that will have, but it sounds a bit sad, doesn't it, that we only have a few dairy cow breeds in the UK and lots of cows are becoming extinct.
Yeah, does sound quite sad. You're right.
But I don't know what we can do about that. If we're all like, we need a solution to the dairy industry because we want more different breeds, if there's a high demand for it, then people are going to breed more diverse herds of cows.
Yeah. Well, it's worth a try.
I don't know how to do that though.
Maybe through making documentaries.
I don't really know what the solution is, do you?
No, I'm sure you'll work it out.
What, me? Personally?
Yeah.
I started making this documentary, I thought that I was relatively well informed, but through making this documentary I've realised how simplified the information I knew was and how complicated this industry is. And I found out so much about all the different innovations and new projects that people are working on in the industry, and I haven't even discussed all of them, but it makes me feel really excited about where the industry is going next. And now I've made this documentary, I feel way more informed, and I feel like it will be easier to make better choices that reflect my morals more when I'm purchasing dairy products.